أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد عبده وآله الطاهرين. We started talking about this idea that what is actually bringing us to this tent. We said that the love that brings us to this tent is not rooted in our family, it's not sourced in our society, it's not sourced in our parents. Those are facilitators. It's actually sourced in the faith and the amal salih of Abu Abdullah himself. He provided you a verse and said the ahadith that explain that particular verse. Tell us this meaning. Okay. We went further and said this imamat, this root belief system that we have within us, it's supposed to yield in some fruits. So we said we have to make sure that we have a real tree and not a fake one, because the fruits that we're looking for are extracted from a real tree. They don't exist as a product of the fake one. We went further. We said that, well, what can affect a tree? What can affect this tree of our belief system and eat it from the inside, make it hollow entirely, such that now it can't give us any fruits? We said one thing that could do that is termites. So the actuality of a termite then for our root belief systems was waswas. That before we get into how waswas affects our root belief systems, let's look at what waswas actually is as an entity. Let's look at this termites. That waswas, it's non-divine whispers. Okay. We talked about the idea that man's heart has two ears that allow for these whispers to come in. One, divine ear, that allows divine inspiration to come in, the divine cargo, and one, the non-divine. We said we have two landing strips in our heart, two sources of input. Okay. We talked about its development and how they develop and some rules associated with that. Then we went further. We said, well, how does waswas affect man? We said, well, it at least affects man at the level of action. Then we said, okay, it also affects man at the level of relationships. Man and his Rabb, man and his body parts, man and his time. And we continued further and we said that waswas also affects man and his root belief systems. Then the talk progressed further and we said, well, how does it actually affect the root belief systems? Here we said, it first comes and separates the three root belief systems that we have. What are the three root belief systems? It was the origin, Tawheed, the destination, Qiyamah or Ma'ad, and the in-between. What was the in-between? It was the divine wilaya. And the job of this divine wilaya was to lead us to the right destination, which was in fact a return to the origin, Tawheed. Okay. So these root belief systems served as a system. And we said when waswas comes in, the first thing it does is it separates them. Okay. They're no longer a system. They're seen as independent entities. And now when this belief system of ours is seen independently, then we saw what happens. When there was an imbalance in the roots, there was imbalance in the effect of it. So now when some people created an imbalance, they had issues with Tawheed and Tawassul. They said, well, is Tawassul really part of Tawheed or not? Then we mentioned certain examples that are more closer to home. We went further. We said, well, this idea of imama, this idea of divine wilaya, what are the multiple methods that are present in our deen when we're studying it? We said there's two main ways. There's an intrinsic way and an extrinsic way. We said We have to know the right thing, but that's not sufficient. Knowing the right thing is very different than doing the right thing. The extrinsic method, the method that looks at the conceptuality of imama as a root belief system, told us exactly that, the concepts, but it was not sufficient. It was not sufficient. We went past that. We said, okay, okay. So we know we have to be on the intrinsic path. We also realized that we have a desperate need for a pure heart, a heart away from termites, where you can put the pieces and start to build that bookshelf. Okay? So that when you start to purify your heart from these termites, from these imbalances in your relationship between you and your ears, your hands, your eyes, your 24 hours, now you actually can interact with the meanings that are there in the words of this divine wali. Now, reading their words is not like reading a newspaper. Okay? Before that, you just simply don't have the tools needed to interact with the meanings. So, expectation to interact with the meaning while there are termites in the heart, it's not going to lead very far. We went past that. We said what? We said there's actually unity between the Imam and the Sharia, such that if you were to take the Sharia away from the Imam, there's nothing left. And if you were to take the Imam away from the Sharia, there's nothing left. They had a realistic relationship. The Imam was the embodiment of that which he preached. He was by definition an Imam, somebody who leads by example, who's at the forefront, at the height, and now he calls you. Okay. We went past that and said, okay, let's look at one very practical point that applies to me and you today, especially living here in the West, and that is, can anybody claim that the Imam was apolitical? We said for sure, no one can claim that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had nothing to do with how the Khilafah and how the rulership was going and working. So we said what? What does termites do? Termites create an imbalance. Right? So we looked at one extreme yesterday, which was being apolitical. We said, okay, we have to stay away from that extreme. We can't be apolitical. But we also looked at a second extreme. We said we can't go towards the other end and jump off as well. Hardiness. Salawat, please. That we can't jump off of one edge of the roof. We have to make sure we don't jump off the other edge either. Foolhardiness. We have a trait in our nafs, a faculty in our nafs. It's called the faculty of anger. Okay? In our ikhlaq books, when there's an imbalance in this faculty, what happens? When there's too little of this faculty in a person, the person starts to embody the traits of a coward. Okay? This typically leads to being apolitical in nature, neutral. I don't want to, somebody else deal with the issue. This particular faculty, it's one of the causes, not the only cause. This particular faculty, when you turn the dial the other way, it creates another defect in a person. Okay? Foolhardiness. You end up becoming the deterrent for your very cause. Okay? The right balance in this particular faculty yields in a trait in man, according to our ethics books. The right balance yields in a trait, and that trait is called courage. According to our akhlaqi books, our ethics books, the books of Marhum Naraqi, father and son, before them and after them as well. When this faculty, the faculty of anger, is maintained at a balanced position, now you have the trait called courage. So, courage is in fact the byproduct of a balanced approach. It's courage. We said the role that is played in the court of Yazid is different than the role that is played in the battlefield of Karbala. Neither are apolitical, but the method and the role played is balanced, appropriate to the situation that you find yourself in. And we concluded the lecture there. Salawat, please. Last lecture, we're looking at the unity between the Imam and the Shafaat in one explicit example, right? Today, we want to look at another aspect of the Imam. Okay, we want to look at what Shafa'a is, right? When we understand that there is unity between the Imam and the Sharia, then either A, I'm following the Sharia to the T, and hence I am following my Imam, or I'm not. In every instance of my 24 hours, right, I can have a checkbox. Either I'm walking in the footsteps of my Imam, check, or not check. I'm not. If I'm not, what happens there? What mechanism does my root belief system have for somebody who might not have at one point followed in the footsteps of their Imam, but does want to come back? This is the mechanism of Shafa'ah. I recognize that I've transgressed. I recognize that I was weak. I had some problems. I made some mistakes. But I also recognize that there is no corrupting this hand of Allah. If I want to follow Him, there is no other way. I have to follow Him, and He is the embodiment of the Sharia. If I have this immense love of Him and I want to remain in His tent, there is no other way. Because if you took the Sharia away from the Imam, what did we say? There's nothing left. It was a unity between him and the Sharia. If you took the Imam away from the Sharia, what was it the case? Nothing left. The Imam was the embodiment of the Sharia. Sirat al-Mustaqim. We saw 3 hadiths there. One hadith saying, Nahnu Sirat al-Mustaqim. We are the Sirat al-Mustaqim. One hadith said that the Sirat al-Mustaqim is in fact the religion that Hazrat Jibreel brought down to the Prophet. And a third hadith said what? The Sirat al-Mustaqim is nothing but the ma'rifat of the Imam. Put them together. The straight path to the right destination is nothing but the Sharia, and the Sharia is nothing but the Imam. There's a unity in these 3 things. The divine wali embodies the guidance that he is giving you. Okay? So I recognize that. I recognize that I have this deep love for Abu Abdullah, this love that no one can take away. Year in, year out, things can happen. But this is one thing that's true. When it comes to the mention of Abu Abdullah, I have that. You don't have to tell me to be sad. On the day of Ashura, I feel sad. On the day of Ashura, I remember him. When the moon of Muharram comes, you don't have to tell me. I'm looking to go to places where his name is mentioned. Okay, so I have this wudda in me. It's a blessing from Allah. Why is it a blessing? Because it's the thing that keeps pulling me back, saying, listen, you might have termites. And if you do, if you truly want to remain in the tent of Abu Abdullah, then get rid of those termites. There's no corrupting the hand of Allah. Okay, so what is shafa'ah? Typically, what's understood of shafa'ah is that on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell his angels, according to my system, this guy is supposed to go to hellfire. Take him and throw him in hellfire. Okay? And as we're going towards hellfire, the Imam comes and says, wait a second, I have something to say here. And he prevents that system from taking man towards hellfire. And now the Imam has interceded for you. He's now prevented the wrath of Allah for you. This is a typical understanding of shifa. Well, it's deformed in its essence and nature. What does waswas do again in the root? It first did what? It separated the three roots: the origin, the destination, and the divine wali. And now once they were separated, it could deform the meaning that they held. In a very similar manner, if shafa'at is seen as something that is separated from tawheed, seen as something that actually limits tawheed, na'udhu billah, tawheed is supposed to be pushing towards hellfire and punishment and so on and so forth, and this shafa'at comes and now stops, it's an imbalanced understanding of what shafa'at is. So what's the right definition of shafa'at? See, if you're stuck in a well and you want to climb up, okay? You want to climb up and you come out of the well, right? It's very difficult to climb up by yourself. If you had a friend up who can dangle down a rope to you, okay, while he is already up himself, he says, now come, I got you, I'll help you. And he's cheering you on too. Now climbing out of the well is a little bit easier. Okay? The real understanding of shifa is similar to this in nature. There is harmony now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-merciful, when He wants to display mercy to His creatures, the mechanism of the mercy of Allah is shifa. It's not independent from Him. It's not separated from Tawheed. Rather, it's sourced in Tawheed. Because He's the Rahman, because He's the Rahim, He's now placed this particular tool for you to come up. How exactly? Well, the person who's at the higher end of the well holding that rope, what qualities does he have? Well, first of all, he's at a place where you're trying to get to. Secondly, he has the power to be able to pull you up. Third, more important than both of those, you could have a tyrant up there who is at the top and has the power to pull you up, but doesn't have your best interest in mind. Ring a bell? The brothers of Nabi Yusuf. No, this divine wali that Allah has appointed, what were his apex traits? His apex traits were not throwing the door or killing the masses. We said his apex traits were the traits of that where he's sourced in, the origin. So now this divine wali, who's the embodiment now of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the embodiment now of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Okay? Now he's standing there atop the well. And he's saying, come up. Not only that, his belief in Allah and his actions in Allah, he's already given you a head start. He's placed in your heart something that no matter how hard the enemies try to remove, they haven't been able to. This wudda, this deep love of him. Even if you didn't want to go up, you still want to go to him. Salawat, please. So now, at any level that man really wants to go up, he understands that shifa is needed. Is that limited to qiyamah? Is that limited to ma'ad, the hereafter? No. It finds its appearance in this dunya first. See, ma'ad, the destination, is nothing but the journey's end, right? If I started walking towards Kingston, Ontario, which is that way, let's say, can I somehow end up in Waterloo, which is that way? No. So the attempt to reach the right destination is actually found in the various steps to get there. If I want to attain shifa'a in the hereafter, I have to try to attain it here first. What is shifa'a again? How do you attain it in this particular world? We said shifa'a is that rope that Allah has placed by the means of this wali, that even if you didn't want to go up, because you love this wali, you still want to climb up. Okay? So that exists in this dunya as well. And what was the wali? The wali was unified and in union with nothing but the Sharia itself. So what is this rope now that the wali embodies? How do you climb towards the wali himself? Well, you fix the imbalances that you have in your 24 hours regarding the Sharia that's been given to you. So if you're somebody who listened to music, you're somebody who ate some things that you shouldn't have eaten, you wore clothing in a certain way that you know the imam of the time for sure is not happy with you wearing that type of clothes, you perhaps saw some things in your life that you know for sure the imam of the time, if he was standing beside you while you watched those things, he wouldn't be happy with you. Then it's you who's after the shifa'ah. The shifa'ah is something you need. As long as you still have the wudda, as long as you still want to be close to that person at the top of the well. As long as you want to be in the tent of Abu Abdullah. Salawat, please. Now let's give some examples of some people who did make some mistakes in history. We have a great scholar. He's a philosopher, he's a faqih, he's the teacher of scholars. Agha Jahangir Khan Qashqai, that's his name. He was originally in Isfahan and studied there. Okay. In his youth, he played an instrument very close to like the guitar. He was a musician. And his story is something like this. He was an expert musician and was very attached to this thing and didn't really care about deen or knowledge or this or that. Nothing. Very strong musician. And one time as he's playing his music instrument, the string breaks. He's like, okay, I gotta go to the market to fix this string. He takes this instrument of his, he goes to the market, he's looking for someone to fix the string. So somebody in the marketplace tells him, while you're trying to fix the string of your instrument and you're striving so hard, why don't you try to fix the strings of your heart? And he gets deeply impacted by that. It is sincere. These words of this particular person sincerely touch him. Okay. He says, where can I fix the strings of my heart? That person takes him to the Hawza in Isfahan, says, this is where they teach you how to fix the strings of your heart. He ends up becoming one of the top scholars of his time. Not just his time. Many teachers of Islamic philosophy and ethics and fiqh call him teacher. What's another story? A story more close to Ashura. We have the story of an individual who took 1,000 strong, who stopped Abu Abdullah from either going forward towards Kufa nor going back to Medina. Had this individual stopped doing what he was doing and let Abu Abdullah go back to Medina, or had allowed him to go towards Kufa, situation might have been different. Had he gone and joined, in fact, the army of Abu Abdullah with 1,000 strong, situation might have been a little bit different. We saw in the story of Hur that you can have a lifetime and mistakes so great. Now, this wasn't just listening to music. This wasn't just watching something that you shouldn't watch. This was an active involvement in what led to Ashura. So you could now have yourself in that particular position and still be somebody who is able to receive this shafa'ah. I'm giving these examples. We're going to discuss exactly why they got it. What was did they win the lottery? What happened exactly? Was it a chance encounter only and that's it? Let's see. We have another example of the magicians of the court of Fir'aun. When Nabi Musa goes into the court of Fir'aun and he's telling Fir'aun, listen, you have to believe in my Rabb. I'm coming from my Rabb. I want you to stop doing tyranny. You are not the Rabb. In fact, Allah is the Rabb. And here's some miracles of mine. Here's some proof of mine. So now Fir'aun calls on some magicians of his. He says, if you really want to battle, come battle with these guys. So these guys are now representatives. They're the forefront army of who? Fir'aun. As they see Nabi Musa to stop the fight, no, they even throw their stones and their sticks. They even go forward to compete now. In the case of Hur, so far we hadn't gotten to that stage yet. We hadn't gotten to the stage that Hur took out his sword actively and went. Yes, he led to a lot of bad things. Now we have these individuals who now throw their serpents and now they're in combat with the Nabi. Even at that stage, Shafa is present for them. So, what is it that causes these individuals to get Shafa? In the case of Agha Jahangir Khan Kashgai, we'll shorten it to say Agha Kashgai. In the case of Agha Kashgai, what did he do? He went towards that which he knew to be correct and he sincerely left behind that which he was attached to. Okay. He said, I don't want to be at the bottom of the well. I need to be at the top. What served his inspiration? He liked being at the top itself. He wanted to fix the strings of his heart. Okay. Let's go to the second one. Second scenario. In the example of Hazrat Hur, he too travels from the bottom of the well to the top of the well. But what's his inspiration? His inspiration is this wadda, this absolute love he has of this person, Abu Abdullah. He's already shown two instances of deep adab and respect towards Abu Abdullah. And now those start to manifest on the day. How can the person I prayed behind, how can the person whose mother is Sayyidatul Nisa al Alameen, how could I now take a sword out and go against him? How could I listen to music? How could I do these bad things? How could I view something that is not in line with what the Imam wants me to see? Wait a second. Oh, yes, I can say that because there's unity between the Imam and the Sharia. So the motivation that Hur has is slightly different. The motivation that Hur has is the motivation that stems from the person standing at the top. I can't be at the bottom of the well, I have to be with him. It's a very similar situation for the magicians of the court of Fir'aun. When they see the truth in what Nabi Musa had to offer, then they both fall in love with the person and the position. Then you want to go up. To what extreme do they go till? Fir'aun says, cut their hands and their feet opposing. He ends up killing them in a very torturous manner. But they still don't give up. They said, no, we have to get out of this well. So now Shifa is something that's not just in the hereafter. Shifa is actualized and is a real entity in this world itself. It's now that person at the bottom of the well, whenever they try to climb out of it for the motivations of A, trying to be out of the well, or B, because they want to be with the person who's outside of the well. Okay. This is what Shifa is. Salawat, please. One other point to consider here. Look at the sunnah of Allah. Whenever shaitan uses an event, something to put down the deen of Allah, Allah uses that very same thing to bring a lot of people up. When shaitan tried to use Agha Qashqai to play his musical instruments and attract people towards music, look at the sunnah of Allah. When this person had sincerity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took that individual and made him into a position where he was a source of guidance now for the masses. Sincerity, a strong resolve to now not go back down the well, to stay up or keep climbing if I'm not up already. How about the second person? Hur. If we stop just before Ashura, what's the final destination of Hur? Is it with Abu Abdullah or against him? It's obvious it's against him. At that point, he's a representative of the non divine forces. He's somebody who supports them. He's somebody who makes others around him feel that, look, we have Hur on our side. Of course, we're going to have an easy war before us. Shaitan aims to do that with sincerity when this person wants to come out of the well. Allah does the opposite. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Hur now becomes a source of guidance for just those people that were in Karbala, a source of help for just Abu Abdullah and his army. No! For 1,400 years plus, he's caused billions of people in this time to go towards the tent of Abu Abdullah. The sunnah of Allah holds. If you are somebody who's making a mistake, if you're somebody who's doing something you know does not belong in the tent of Abu Abdullah, and you sincerely give it up, the sunnah of Allah holds. Another salawat, please. Okay. So what does this mean? Does this mean that now I say, I'm sorry, astaghfirullah? That's it, done, problem solved? Well, let's go back to the stories. Al Qashqai, did he just say, oh yeah, I should probably fix my heart? Let me leave the musical instruments and that's it. Neither did he stop at the appearance of an apology, nor did he stop at relinquishing of the mistake. He went a third step, which was what? Proceeding towards the opposite direction. If you want to come out of a well, simply recognize that you have to go up, and preventing from yourself from going down is not sufficient from actually coming out of the well. You actively strive now. Those things that are going to take me down, I got to get rid of them. I got to hold on to this particular rope in a stronger manner. I have to climb. Why? Either A, because I want to get out of the well, or B, because I really want to be with that person that's up there. So we come to this now, final point of today's lecture. What is Jubran? What is now, how do I recompense and how do I fix? I've made a lot of mistakes. I listened to music. I did A, B, C, D, all the way to Z in my life. Okay. How do I know go back? How do I know? I can't travel back in time. Can't get rid of those things. The simple question is, what do I do now? Well, very simple. The first thing to do is have an immense regret on the action that which I did. If I can't conceptually separate myself from the event and say, I am not that. If I can't even bring it to the presence of the mind, this notion that there's no unity, no actuality between me and the sin, there's no hope of bringing it to the presence of the heart. The first step is an absolute resolve. I know the things that I do that Abu Abdullah does not like. The first things, the first thing to do is I commit. I said, those things which I know Abu Abdullah does not like, I have to have a resolve to stop them. What's my motivation? It's either the top of the well itself, the position, or the person standing there. These motivations aren't small. For 1,400 years, it's brought people to the tent of Abu Abdullah. People have given their arms and their kids and still upheld the mention of Abu Abdullah. To be close to him is not a small motivation. Okay, I make that resolve. I want to say that there's a separation between me and this action. There's no actual relationship. It's a fake one. I want to cut it. Okay, conceptually, I separate myself from it. Now what? What did Hur do? Did he just say to Abu Abdullah that, I'm sorry I made a mistake, and he just went neutral on the side? No. Now I actively progress in the other direction. If I truly want to get to my destination, then now Shafa'a lies in an active pursuit towards that. You're being assisted in that. You yourself can't do it. That's why you had this wudda, this immense love of Abu Abdullah inside you. You needed that. If you didn't have the immense love of Abu Abdullah, you wouldn't know if you wanted to go above this well or not. Because conceptually, when you are used to being at the bottom of the well, you by definition are not at the top of the well. So now you need a link now to pull you up. A motivation now to bring you out. And you've been given that. But what was the job of Waswas? Waswas made sure that even though you had the right tools, there was an imbalance. You couldn't use them. This is how Waswas affects the root belief system of Imamat. Salawat, please. What happens to a person now when they reach that position? When they're unified with their Imam? When they're close to him, absolutely close. Now they've taken that particular path and they've reached the apex of perfection. Perhaps they weren't even in the well to begin with. We're looking at one individual like that tonight. That he's not just an apparent connection to Abu Abdullah, he has a real one too. It's not just that he's the son of Abu Abdullah. He follows in his footsteps so closely. We'll talk about a certain interaction between Abu Abdullah and Hazrat Ali al-Akbar. Then inshallah we'll have one of the brothers come and recite a musibah for Hazrat Ali Akbar himself. See, as they're traveling towards Karbala, near a place called Tha'labiyeh, Abu Abdullah, while he's traveling on the horse, his eyes shut and he has a dream. He wakes up and he says to Ali al-Akbar, who's traveling beside him, someone just told me in my dream that as you're moving forward, as you're speeding forward, death is actually taking you towards Jannah. Ali Akbar over here could say a lot of things. He could say, Alhamdulillah, we are the noble family of the Prophet. That's where we belong. We belong in Jannah, going to the right destination. Ali Akbar says for something very specific. He asks about Abdullah a question. Ya Aba, afalasna ala al-haq. Oh father, are we not on the right path? Look to this man. Oh father, are we not on the right path? Ba Abdullah tells him, says, yes, Bala, Ya Bunayya, oh my beloved son. This love of Abdullah is not an emotional one. This person, Ali al-Akbar, is the embodiment of the deen as well. He's gone to the point where he is now both in his form, in his mantiq, in the way he speaks, a true representative of the Nabi of this deen. So this love Abu Abdullah has of the son is not an arbitrary one. Abdullah tells what to him? He says, Bala ya bunayya. By Allah, we are on the right path. Then Ali Akbar comes and replies to Abu Abdullah and says, Oh Abu Abdullah, oh my father, then it doesn't matter. There's no fear in death for me. This is somebody who has the wudda of Abu Abdullah. If I'm with you and I know you're on haqq, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters to me. Oh Abu Abdullah, I'm in your tent tonight. I'm with you. And for sure you're on haqq. Nothing else matters. The difficulties and the tribulations, the swords and arrows that I have to bear, be it the physical sword and the physical arrow, or be it the swords and arrow of my own carnal desires, I'll bear them. Nothing else matters. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Recite together, please. Assalamu ala al-Husayn
وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب Hussein, you are the embodiment of perfection. Ya Abu Abdullah, you and the Sharia are one. There is no removing goodness from you, Ya Abu Abdullah. Whatever is Kamal, whatever is virtue, you have it, Ya Hussein. We've come to a moment where Abu Abdullah wants to manifest the ayah of the Quran where Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Some of you understood. It's the night of the 7th. A moment comes in the camps of Hussein where no one remains but his Ahlul Bayt. Please stay in your tents, O Ahl Haram of Hussein. but the moment must come. خرج علي ابن الحسين. If anyone had to come out, the ladies did not want this one man to come out from the tents. The first from the Banu Hashim to come seek permission has arrived. And what a man has arrived indeed. فاستأذن علي الأكبر has come to his father now. He says, Father, all your friends have gone. Allow me to be the first to defend you, to defend the deen of Allah. A leader doesn't say, you all go. A leader says, look, I have gone first, you come after. It's not the case that he sends his friends and then afterwards he says, you all keep going. There's a reason why the companions went first. Normally Hussein would send his own first. The companions insisted, we will go first. None of the Banu Hashim will touch the battlefield before us. And I think it was a wise decision. Do you know why? I think when the companions said, we will go, the Banu Hashim shall not touch their swords. It's because they didn't want to see that moment when Abu Abdullah looked his son up and down, وَبَكَى. He looked up to the skies and cried out, Allahumma ashhad ala hadha al-qawm. Ya Allah, you bear witness. فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك. Ya Allah, whenever we miss Rasulullah, we'd line up to look at this young son of mine. Abu Abdullah looked out into the crowd of the enemies. When Abu Abdullah would face the enemies, he would speak to them, he would advise them. But now that he sees Ali Akbar has his armor suited, he looks at Umar ibn Sa'd and he says, may Allah curse you. May Allah curse your womb. May Allah curse your ancestry and your descendants in the same way that you are cutting off my rahim. This is a difficult moment for the Ahl Haram. With all the companions, the news is spreading in the camp of Hussein. Habib has gone, Zuhair has gone, the loyal friends of Hussein have all gone one by one. But Ali Akbar is different. When Ali is making his way one by one, the women begin to surround him. Ali, irham ala ghurbatina, have mercy on our hearts, O Ali. One part of the musibah is this. Ali is not like any other warrior. Ali is from Banu Hashim. He goes forward onto the battlefield. Ali is young, but he's at that age where he's a warrior like no other. Ali puts up a fight, he puts up a battle like no one had seen on that day. He goes one by one, the Maqatil narrate 120 of them he slays in the way of Allah. If you can remember this one line, it'll help you on the day of Ashura. This line has a lot of meaning. At one point, Ali Akbar returns to the tents. You know, tonight is the night of the 7th of Muharram. On a day like tomorrow, the enemies remove Abu Abdullah's camp from Furat. Ali al-Akbar puts up a fight, but at one point he returns. He says, Ya Aba al-Atash qad qatalani. وثقل الحديد قد أجهدني. Who sang this? Ali says, oh Father, the thirst is killing me, and the weight of the armor is burdening me. فهل إلى شربة من الماء سبيل? Father, is there any way that you can quench my thirst? Abu Abdullah, this is the second time now. فبكى. It's normal, you and I, we cry. This is Hussein, a second time he's crying now. He says, Ali, be patient. Soon your grandfather will quench your thirst with his hands. And when your grandfather quenches your thirst, there's no thirst thereafter. Go, Ali. Look how easily it looks like Hussein is giving his son. When you want to give anything in the way of Allah, you give that which you love most. All of a sudden the world flips upside down on Hussein. Do you know which moment this is? All of a sudden Wal-Mal'un strikes Ali. You know the story. When that Mal'un struck Ali, he lost his balance, and his arms wrap around the neck of his horse. Ya Allah, the Father is watching, have mercy. Now the horse is going towards the enemy. We were told commonly, like father, like son. When I read this line, I feel it's the maqtal of Abi Abdullah himself. فقدتوه بسيوفهم إربان إربان. Whoever had swords struck with their swords. Whoever had spear, la ilaha illallah. I want to tell you what happened at Furat, and I'll come back to Ali. Have some context of what Ali says here. His call is very important. When Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas lost his two arms, and an arrow was pierced in his eye, and now he's on the sand of Karbala. He calls out to his brother, Ya Akha, Adrik Akhak. When you call out to your brother for help, it means your brother can still help you. Ali doesn't say, Ya Abba, Adrikni. He says, Ya Abba, Assalamu alayk. He said, Assalamu alayk. هذا جدي رسول الله. You told me the truth, oh Father. I can see your grandfather Rasulullah is coming towards me. What is he saying, Ali? He's saying, Hussein, come sooner. Ali is waiting. Zahra is waiting. Your brother Hassan is waiting. Allow me to say this. When a father is watching his son in this moment, you would expect on the battlefield he would rush to his son. Somehow the maqatil say that Zainab reached Ali first. Wa Aliyah. Abu Abdullah reaches Ali now. Don't be afraid. On this night you can cry loudly. Do you know why? Because Hussein himself in this moment cried loudly. But his tone in his cry is different. When Ali was going to the battlefield, he said, Ali, go. Rasulullah is waiting for you. Now he says, قَتَلَ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا قَتَلُوكَ يَا Ali. May Allah kill those who killed you. على الدنيا بعدك العفا. This world has no meaning without you, Ali. Abu Abdullah is looking at his son. You know, he came too late. Ali has already left this world. Let me say this one line in التماس الدعاء. When Abu Abdullah reached Ali, دمقات النريت فوضع خده على خده. The father placed his cheek on the cheek of Ali. Ya Hussein, I'm sure your sister also wanted to place her cheek on your cheek. But when she came down from Tell Zainabiyah, what cheek is left? You're up there reciting the Quran on the spear. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك أيها المظلوم. ألا وصلى الله على باكين على الحسين.